Researchers in Sweden have discovered a way to use artificial intelligence in the detection of breast cancer. Interim findings published in The Lancet from new research suggest that AI-supported mammography detected 20% more cancers compared to mammography conducted sort of in the traditional method by two radiologists, the double screening from radiologists. So they're also looking at other implications, safety and false positives and workload for radiologists. And it's all included in what is considered to be the first randomized trial of its kind. And let's talk about it in more detail with Dr. Samir Gupta, who is with us, a respirologist and professor of medicine at the University of Toronto. He is in Toronto this morning. And Dr. Gupta, good to see you again today.
You too.
I know this caught your eye. You and I have talked about AI in medicine and its various applications. This is becoming a big story, and we've talked about this, but this is a really interesting example that I wanted to talk about with you for just a few minutes. So this first randomized trial, an interim report looking at 80,000 women in Sweden and their mammograms. As you saw, what were the big headlines from this? What did these scientists find?
Yeah, so as you said, Heather, the first thing is that it's prospective. You know, what we've had a lot of studies looking at all sorts of different radiology images and how AI did with reading those, including mammograms, where it's been retrospective. So you take thousands of women who've had mammograms who we already know the outcome, and then you put it through AI retrospectively and say, well, how would it have done compared to the radiologists and compared to ultimately what was diagnosed? Whereas this is saying, well, can we actually do this in practice? What if we take women and prospectively have the AI read their mammogram as they come in for their actual screening? So in that sense, it's the first of its kind. It's a randomized trial, which means that these 80,000 women, about half of them had their mammogram read by AI, and the other had it read in the conventional way, which in Sweden is two radiologists. So one thing to note is that the AI wasn't completely responsible for reading. There was still a backup. What they did is they used the AI to replace the first radiologist, but there was still a second radiologist who laid eyes on what the AI decided to make sure that nothing was either missed or overdiagnosed. And as you said, it was encouraging. So what they found was that, although, again, we're going to wait for the full analysis, which is 100,000 women, in this early analysis, there were no safety signals. So it didn't look like the AI was missing things or that it was diagnosing a bunch of things that it shouldn't have and causing a whole bunch of unnecessary procedures. On the other hand, it did pick up more cancers. And as you said, 20% more. The absolute number is one extra cancer per 1,000 women screened. Anytime you have a technology that's picking up more things, you always have to worry, is it picking up too much? Is it picking up things that are insignificant and leading to more testing, more anxiety, more procedures? That didn't seem to be the case. That's part of the safety signal here, is that the AI didn't result in a higher false positive rate. So all of those things are very encouraging from these data.
And the actual 20% figure, as you said, the one in that other larger cohort, I mean, obviously, the earlier you detect, the more you detect, the better. But is that a significant number to you, Dr. Gupta, 20%?
It is. It was 5 per 1,000 when two radiologists looked at it, and that went to 6 per 1,000. So that's a relative 20% increase. It's an absolute 0.1%, 1 in 1,000. But those were cancers. They were not, false positives. Now, the caveat here, though, is, and this is sort of a strange thing to say to the lay public, but were all of those cancers meaningful? The reason I say that is the problem with screening is that we get into sometimes what's called overdiagnosis. So although it picked up more cancers, the question we ask is, were all of those cancers meaningful? Were they all going to ultimately be problematic and cause symptoms and ultimately spread in those women? And as it turns out, with these screening modalities, you sometimes pick up really indolent or low-grade cancers that once you know about them, you've got to take them out. But ultimately, they would not have spread and would not have caused problems, so that when you step back and look at it on a population level, you may have caused a lot of anxiety and biopsies and procedures that you didn't really need to do because ultimately it didn't help that woman. So this is something that this study has not answered and will not answer. We'll get a little bit more on this in the larger trial because they'll actually tell us about the pathology. They'll tell us if the AI algorithm picked up more low-grade cancers, which would be a concern. But ultimately, you need long-term studies to really determine if you're doing what's called overdiagnosis and being fooled into thinking you're picking things up early, but picking things up that aren't meaningful.
So that's interesting because, yes, they did indicate that in this final report and in this additional research, they will look at that key question of whether the use of AI in mammography is justified for the reasons you just lay out. Do you think, though, on balance, having read this, that the interim findings seem to suggest that?
It's very encouraging. What's really impressive is just the ability of that algorithm to do two things. One is to rule out, to sort of say this is a low risk, not to worry, and on the other hand, to say this is high risk. And when you look at the highest risk identified by the AI algorithm, a large proportion of those women ended up having cancer. So all of those are very impressive things. Again, this is a Swedish study. Does it translate into our environment, our centers? Lots of things there that may be different. The mammography technology, the AI, will we have the same AI? The population, we don't know anything about the ethnicity of these women.
Yes.
It's also not women just getting screened by age. These are women who had either a personal history of cancer, breast cancer, or a family history. So it's not the routine screening. Also, just we have different mammography technology in different parts of the world. And we don't necessarily always double read in Canada. So the efficiency piece, they talked about 44% less radiologist time, because that's another important part of this. Not
the
just
workload, yes.
It's the workload. We don't have enough of this human resource, but we don't double read here. So it's not a comparable. Typically, we don't double read because we don't have those resources. So we can't necessarily compare. It's not apples to apples. Compared to what's happening in Sweden. So very encouraging in terms of the results of the study. But in terms of translating that to our environment and other parts of the world, a few caveats there.
Such an interesting context, again, to help us understand, but I'll take encouraging as the word that you've used on a number of occasions there as we assess this. Again, just published in The Lancet and the first of its kind. An interesting discussion with you as always, Dr. Gupta. Thanks, and I'll look forward to next time.
My pleasure.